drill pipe is put down into the ground, and someone like Halliburton comes in and fills that pipe with cement, pushing the cement down through the pipe so it comes out of the bottom of the pipe and then gurgles up around the outside. When it gurgles up around the outside, the actual hole is cemented or cased so that the hole won't collapse. If, in fact, the cementing job is done improperly for any reason, there's the possibility that the hole collapses. There's a possibility that gases in cavities that they're drilling through come into the pipe and come up through the pipe and the collapse. There are some reports that part of the drilling column that they actually drilled had collapsed, and they actually had to drill a parallel column next to it. And that may have occurred because of poor cementing operations. So Halliburton's primary job in this thing was to cement and enforce the well so it wouldn't collapse. Now this well was drilled both as a exploratory well, and then this rig did something that it doesn't normally do. It added what's called a production liner to the well. In other words, it prepped this particular hole to actually produce, and this rig was set to move off the hole in 2 days and go on to another drill another exploratory well. They would have brought another production rig over it at the time and then started producing it. But this was an exploration well which was asked for some reason to finish production operations on this well, and there is some inference that the company itself had lost some drilling pipe in a prior well, up to $25 million worth of drilling pipe, and one of the reasons this rig stayed on this particular well to complete the production operations was to save money because they had lost money on a prior exploratory well. That, again, is something that needs to be looked into.
I want to follow that up with Tyson Slocum. Scott Bickford, the attorney, is in New Orleans. Tyson Slocum with Public Citizen is in Washington, D.C. Tyson, two members of Congress, Congressmember Henry Waxman and Bart Stupak, have called on Halliburton to provide all documents relating to the possibility or risk of an explosion or blowout at the Deepwater Horizon rig. They're calling on Halliburton to do this. Can you explain further their demands? It's by May 7th they want this information, the status of the adequacy, the quality, monitoring, and inspection of the cementing work.
Yeah, I mean, for Halliburton, this cementing of these offshore wells is a major component of its oil services business. About 15 to 17% of its annual revenues come from this specific type of contracting. So they're one of the largest contractors operating in the Gulf and around the world doing this. And I think that it's clear that there was a problem with this particular cementing, that it did not case the well properly, and that allowed gas to escape, which caused the blowout and enveloped the rig in gas, which was then ignited and sparked the fire that killed the 11 workers. And so I think what Congress is trying to get at here is they want to know more about Halliburton's cementing operations, and I think we need not only Congress to look at this, but the Department of Interior needs to temporarily suspend the ability of Halliburton to continue doing this type of cementing contracting on offshore drills until we've got a full investigation, every step-by-step process of the way that this company operates to ensure that that they're complying with all safety regulations. And that really brings us to another big point here, Amy, is that, you know, over the last decade, the Department of Interior, which oversees these offshore oil rigs, has not been doing a good enough job of overseeing the very powerful oil industry. We're in an era where government regulations are being rolled back. Just in September of 2009, BP submitted comments on a proposed rulemaking by the Department of Interior to mandate additional safety requirements on these deep water rigs. And BP, in those September 2009 comments, said, we don't need additional regulatory oversight. We have our own internal voluntary safety standards which are adequate. And I think no matter what the outcome of this investigation, I think that we can all conclude here that we can no longer just trust large multinational corporations to do voluntary measures to protect the public. We have to have strong government oversight over these very, very powerful corporations. And a decade ago, the Department of Interior, after a similar type of near blowout on an offshore oil platform, issued an emergency guidance calling for an emergency backup blowout prevention valve that would be on the sea floor in the event that you had a rig blowout like we've had here in the Gulf, because we had the first tragedy, Amy, of the explosion that killed the 11 workers, and that's probably the worst part of this whole thing. But now the current tragedy is that oil is seeping out of the ocean floor because the rig has been destroyed. And we don't have any mechanism so far to stop that flow of oil that is just going directly into the Gulf that is now threatening coastal ecosystems. Two countries that have extensive offshore oil drilling operations, Norway and Brazil, mandate that oil companies doing that offshore drilling have this emergency backup valve that can shut off the flow of oil in the event of a blowout. In the United States, we don't have those requirements, and BP did not have an emergency backup system because it was too expensive, and they're looking to cut costs. So once again, we've got a situation where BP, in pursuit of bigger profits, chose not to have a demonstrated technology available that would stop the flow of oil. And now, unfortunately, a lot of people on the Gulf are paying the price.
Halliburton has said it's premature and irresponsible to speculate on any specific causal issues. Interestingly, it was accused of performing a poor cement job in the case of a major blowout in the Timor Sea. That's off East Timor last August. An investigation there is underway. And as you're talking about the standards in the United States versus other countries, Tyson Slocum, when it comes to dealing with blowout prevention?
Yeah, I mean, the United States has weaker standards compared to at least two other countries that have extensive offshore operations, and that's Norway, which a lot of Americans may not realize is actually a huge oil producer and oil exporter, and Brazil, which has huge offshore oil resources. In both of those countries, they require that oil companies have to have this remote-controlled blowout valve. And so basically the way it works is it's triggered acoustically, and so you've got a ship on the surface of the ocean that after a blowout could send an acoustic signal down 5,000 feet down to the sea floor, and you could have that emergency backup valve shut off that flow of oil. These valves cost about $500,000. And, you know, BP believed that that was too expensive. And so they elected not to install that technology. But a number of experts have weighed in and said it could definitely help. Of course, Amy, there's never a guarantee that a backup system is always going to work with a catastrophic blowout like we've seen. But it's clear that in two other countries, they require this because they believe it is a prudent measure to help prevent the flow of oil after a blowout. And in the United States, we currently don't have that. And I think that Congress, one of the things that they need to do in the aftermath of this blowout is require all deep water wells to have this technology. And we also have to remember, Amy, that this type of drilling is a lot different than we've seen from a generation ago. They are drilling deeper and deeper, and that means that there's more and more pressure, and it's a much more dangerous activity. I mean, they're operating in 5,000 feet of water, and the drill from the floor of the ocean is going another 18 to 20,000 feet down. These are massive operations that were not happening a decade or more ago, and we have a lot more risks, and the regulatory oversight needs to catch up to those risks, and we have to mandate that these companies comply with stronger protections, both for their workers and the environment.
We're also joined from San Francisco by Antonia Juhas, the author of The Tyranny of Oil, the world's most powerful industry, and what we must do to stop it. She's director of the Chevron program at Global Exchange. She's been looking at the millions of dollars